In this week's Memes and Machines, we start the year on a bang, a boom. We give our 10 AI predictions, the good, the bad, the ugly. And in Ben's word, hit us, Ben. What did you say?
The world is definitely going to end in 20 years.
Sit back, grab a cold beverage from the fridge and relax, because you're now locked in to the sounds of memes and machines.
Memes and Machines is back. It's 2025. Good to see you both. How you doing?
Hey up.
Perfect.
You have got so northern. Dirty Politician has got super northern.
Why?
Ayo.
Just because I'm wearing black?
No, you said Ayo. That's that's a very northern term.
It is for a southerner living in the north, I'll give you that.
Ayo. It's so funny. You know, in Yorkshire, my accent is still relatively strong, but it's very tame compared to probably most people.
Oh, yeah.
And I realized what we do is I spent a lot of time with my family over Christmas, and we skip words. Like in Yorkshire, every second word is skipped.
Yeah.
It's just a very lazy way of speaking.
Everything's
Yeah.
insert.
It's like a lag.
Yeah.
Skipping. Anyway, that's my observations. Gents, I got a fun episode for us. Today. Yesterday, I wrote some predictions. Predicting things is my favorite thing to do because A, you can't prove me wrong today. Maybe in a year's time you can. But if I get them right, I look like a genius. If I get them wrong, we can forget about it. We can just brush it under the rug. So predictions are my favorite thing to do. And I did 10 AI predictions, and some of them, I'm actually quite proud of them. So what I thought we would do for this session is go through each one, and I want you both to give me a take. So I'm going to start with number one. I think 2025 will be the year of AI PR disasters. So for me, in comedic fashion, AI is going to be the most talked about term in business, the startup economy, marketing, the creator economy, all of the above. And one of the things that businesses tend to do when something is new, they don't want to be left behind. Whether you're a creator, whether you're a business, whether you're a startup, everyone's looking for advantages. The problem, you have a bunch of legacy companies, enterprise, large organizations that are just not ready. But in their bullishness, they will start implementing AI agents, agentic processors. We saw it all last year with chatbots being integrated and messing up customer service and all of those things. And it's what I call emerging technologies meets legacy culture. So I think this year we're going to see more of the same. There's going to be some comedy, and the media is going to love it. They love to tear down innovation and be very satirical. So what do you think, gents? Is that a thumbs up from both of you, or am I missing on this one?
No, I think you're absolutely right. But I would say that we got hammered with AI last year and the fatigue started to set in already. So if this is one of the years when your company pushes out AI, you're going to have to do it very strategically because a lot of people are already very fatigued by it all. You know, there's just so much going on and the race is so crazy. We haven't seen anything even close to this since the .com era. And none of us were really around for that era. So like in our lifetimes, this is the fastest, most, crazy, is above crypto. It's above NFTs. It's above everything else. So, again, I'm just going to say is if this is the year for PR nightmares and AI, it's going to come with a lot of fatigue as well. People are going to start bored of these stories.
I think we live in a bit of a bubble, though, to be honest. So,
I don't know, man. My radar
Yep.
is my mum's heard about this. It's making BBC News. She knows what ChatGPT is. She knows who OpenAI is. She knows Elon Musk owns an AI company. She knows these things. So I don't think we're as much in a bubble as you think when my mum, who can't turn on a Wi-Fi router, knows about ChatGPT.
I mean from the fatigue standpoint, because to a lot of people,
Maybe.
to your mom, it's super interesting. And actually you go on that that magical journey where you use ChatGPT for a thing you never thought you could do for the first time.
I
And you
mean
go,
more
oh,
about the
wow.
legacy software companies all introducing it now. You know, like, because we're already well aware of what ChatGPT and others can do. It's not impressive when, say, Salesforce can do that,
No,
or
it's
HubSpot can do that, or whatever, you know.
and that's where I think the PR disaster comes, though, in the sense that you're going to have really bad implementation. It's going to be rushed through enterprise. It's going to be rushed through business. And new doesn't always mean better. Faster doesn't always mean better. And I think a lot of implementation will be ill thought through. And as a consequence, that's where you're going to see some of the narratives about this not
I would
being.
agree then, yeah.
Ben, what do you think?
That's where I can see the PR coming in for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a big advantage for the biggest advantage is for the smaller companies, the startups, etc. Because we've talked about it before. They're going to be able to take bigger risks with AI because the big corps won't do stuff unless it's been over approved, which means that they will take longer to learn what works and what their audience responds well to in terms of like AI integration in terms of content, etc. Whereas the risk taking companies will be able to just test, and they will go through bad iterations of AI content or whatever they put out. But I just think that the winners will be the ones that take the risks. I don't know, like, I think it all depends on the audience as well of the company, brand, or business, and how different age groups adopt and AI technology over the next year or so. And we all talk about actually the younger audience. Really, I really don't know like what each demographics. Again, understanding of where of are they in the bubble or out of the bubble? It's funny because you talk about ChatGPT, Chris, but if you go to a room and ask them what Claude is, most people don't know what Claude is.
I agree. Yeah,
and so they don't really know the surface. And it's understanding, okay, in terms of each demographic. Like, I actually think it's probably pretty even across. Let's just say up to people who are internet savvy. So anyone, I don't know, probably you go up towards 50, 60. Anyone below that age who's fairly internet savvy, like, what's their understanding of AI? Because I think the people whose brands and businesses have audiences who have adopted AI earlier and have a wider audience of adoption will be the ones that I think are more accepting of it. Because everybody is sort of, I think, when they first hear about it, looks at it negatively rather than positively. I mean, you do get optimists, but a lot of people seem to be. The narrative is very much pessimism first, from what I see. Apart from people who are like the technologists, the futurists.
I think you're right with what you said earlier, though. Like, startups are incentivized to innovate.
Yeah.
And legacy companies aren't so incentivized to innovate because it can go so badly wrong, Like, that's the big thing that we've noticed is, like, ChatGPT didn't exist. OpenAI was a not-for-profit research company. Now they're a multi-billion-dollar, for-profit company, but they had to innovate in order for Google to release and Claude to release and others to release because they had things to lose, and OpenAI did not.
Well, that's
at
the
that
point
time.
around the disasters is you've got these two factors at play. The startup, the emerging, is dead. Every startup they say is dead. And a founder is consistently, and a founding team is consistently trying to revive it. So that's the truth, right? It's an audacious task to create value and create a company from nothing. Conversely, an enterprise business has, legacy, it has history, it has a reputation, it has a brand.
Money.
So it has money, which is lifeline, it's oxygen. It has oxygen to live. So it's much
The
harder
seesaw's
to
interesting,
change.
isn't it? Because the things that startups don't have are the exact strengths of enterprise. The money, the legacy, all of the buying power, but the things that the small guys have, that they innovate faster, they can take more risk, they can do these
They don't
things.
have a choice. It's just
There
it's
is no
like
choice. It's
there
do or
is.
die, so lots of startups fail. 99% of startups don't make it past year 2. That's like
Yeah,
a statistic in America and the UK.
yeah,
1 in 100 will make it past year 2.
yeah. Let's start the year. 99% of all startups I'm involved in are going to succeed and be billion-dollar companies.
Yeah.
Just want to put that
You
on
can be the
record.
1%. The 1% club. Hey, where's your out of office hat that you said you were going to wear? You're branding yourself, which is cool. I'll give you. I like
So
the
this
co-created
is by the way,
cap. That's
this is
cool.
a bit of a side digress, but I ordered. This is the sample of the hats, and I
You
hate
know
it.
what? The more I'm seeing it, you hate it. I really
Yeah,
like it. I think it looks like a
No,
sound wave. It kind of gives me like music vibes.
no,
Although
I
maybe
hate.
that's not the association you want.
I hate it. So I ordered it to be embroidered, so it's like big and
Right,
chunky.
right.
So it looks good. It's like a good quality hat. But what I'm basically getting on the because you have to order 100 of these things, so I'll send you both
Oh
some pics.
man, you
But I
ordered
basically
100.
got
That's amazing.
co-created in little there because it just
Yeah.
looks. Because I'm like, well, I look like I'm wearing a corporate hat, and the key with corporate merch is it needs to look cool. Like you need to
It
want to
kind of
wear
looks like
it.
Pac-Man is a sound wave eating a little thing though. Like you've got something. It's kind of
Yeah,
cool.
it's all right. It's all right. I just wouldn't like if I saw my hats lined up, I wouldn't pick this one. And
Fair
I
enough.
want to pick up the co-created hat and go, that's the one I want.
Fair
Anyway,
enough.
number 2, gents, my second prediction, and you probably don't have a strong take, you'll probably just agree with this. I wrote advanced smarts. I think what we're seeing now is AI models demonstrating extraordinary problem-solving capabilities. And I'll give you a first anecdote from myself. 6 months ago, I was using ChatGPT to monitor contracts, to reference contracts, to highlight things that are relevant based on what I was looking for, and then to integrate those considerations into a new contract. And almost 70% of the time I would do that, it would miss things. So it wasn't accurate, which makes it, when you're doing a legal document where accuracy matters, it makes it impossible to use. I yesterday did the exact same thing, referencing a shareholder agreement with an employment contract, and it did it perfectly. It did it so perfectly, and don't get me wrong, I'm well trained in prompt engineering in the sense that I know what to ask for and I know what I was looking for. And that to me is showing an advanced capability way beyond that of, say, an average solicitor.
Can I ask
Certainly at
which
the
model you used? Did you use 01 or 03?
So I used 01,
Mhm.
but because 03 I couldn't upload the document.
Oh, right.
So 03 has limitations on document type, so I still
Right.
used 01. So the reality is, once they unlock all features in 03 plus whatever the next reiteration will be, yeah, you're going to see that. So for me, I think a lot of data is suggesting that the average large language model will surpass 170 IQ, which is wild to think on that curve that we've been on. I think a year ago it was about 115, somewhere in that region.
Well, it's funny because last year I said chain of thought is coming into all AI to make it a lot more useful. Because essentially, the thing that was always argued was we shouldn't use compute on the reasoning part. It should just be speedy, give you the answer, give you the most likely answer, but not actually use computation to check its answer and
Yep.
then actually
To
falsify
validate.
if that's correct or not, or validate exactly. So that is a simple process, even though it is more costly to the environment, unfortunately, is much more likely to give you value and therefore use it usefully. Whereas in your case, it's a brilliant example, actually, because let's say that you did that same thing last year with the contract. Now, it's zero value to you if you've got to go check the whole thing for its errors. you actually spent just as much time doing that task as you would have done, in fact, a little bit more, because you wouldn't have done the whole give it to ChatGPT in the first place if you knew it was going to make errors. You'd have just gone straight to doing the task. So actually that's cost you time, versus now you can actually rely on it somewhat more and it will gain you time. So it went from devaluing to overvaluing.
Right.
And that's a big jump, and so that compute power is actually justified in that case, in that task. Whereas other tasks, it can do just as good a job. It could just do, let's say you didn't want something factual and it just gave you some copywriting for a social media post. Doesn't matter if it's good at reasoning, does it? That's what me and Ben argue a lot with content creation. It's like, so what is good at more reasoning? That doesn't help it write better content. It doesn't make it more useful to us content creators. It makes it useful to lawyers and account managers and people that have to do factual checking of documents. That's not us, though.
I think you're right, as in it depends. It's kind of one of my other predictions, actually. Ben,
the models are they're stagnating in terms of, I think they're
depends which use case you're going for.
Use case, yeah. It's like most people don't need a better model to solve a complex math problem.
Exactly.
Like I'm not solving complex math.
1% of the users need to solve scientific equations.
It's the models are getting better for an even smaller percentage of people that actually need them to be that good at a certain thing. And it's like, okay, like I would love for them to start building a model that is just specifically really good at creative writing, or like, well, I just use Claude because it just seems to be better. But
that's why companies like Jasper and stuff thrive, Ben, because they knew that even though they were less capable, they were better at doing that specific task.
Yeah.
So that's actually quite promising for AI companies, because the specific tasks are where the most value comes from. If you had a YouTube writing thumbnail creation AI, you'd probably pay $30 a month for that, more than ChatGPT. Wouldn't you say useful to you?
Wouldn't you say, Ben, that you're like desensitized? Because if you go back like 2 years, the writing abilities are really good. They're actually like solid. They're not incredible, but if you put a good prompt and you reiterate a few times and put the effort in, you do get a really good outcome.
Yeah.
And like the difference, and just in my example, just for reference, chaps, for me to do what I did would have cost me about $4,000 in legal fees.
And that's the value creation I'm talking about. It's like that $4,000 is now savable, whereas before it was still another $4,000. And you had to go to ChatGPT because you couldn't be confident. You couldn't walk into a legal case where it's actually very, very harsh to get it wrong, and make those errors.
Yeah, and it depends on the stakes. This was an employment contract that had to cross-reference multiple things. But the point being is, I do think we're on the infancy of figuring out how we apply this new computing intelligence into many things that we do. Like I use it tons for talking about like over dinner with my dad. We were talking about film directors, and my dad said, he said he might have said like Oliver Stone did Good Morning Vietnam, and I'm like, I don't think he did. And I said Oliver Stone, basically, a better search. I use it for like better, more accurate search now. And I'd imagine most people in the same. So I think, although I agree with you, Ben, my general thesis is I think it's like you're desensitized, and maybe it'll not close that creative gap that you're looking for anytime soon. Maybe it's like God as good as it will for that particular task, but it's hella good. I think it is pretty good.
It's funny that we were all talking about this reasoning stuff because Perplexity did this a year ago. The way they did it, though, wasn't as, useful as maybe this current new reasoning model is, but they cited actual sources and gave you clickable links. That's why people used it as a better search engine. Like you just said in your specific case there, Perplexity would have answered your question a year ago, Ollie. Instead of now, you get some reasoning engine within ChatGPT that can do similar things. But again, it doesn't cite itself very well.
All Perplexity did that was accurate was source. Instead of it being a black box, it told you where the information came from. But it wasn't accurate information necessarily. That's the only problem with it. It just sourced some shitty reference off a blog off the internet. Like, that's the reality with Perplexity. I'm not saying Perplexity doesn't have a place, but it wasn't advanced reasoning. It just did one feature, which was sourcing. So, like, where accuracy matters and you may need to do further research and validate yourself, it was useful for that sense.
I think the crux of this whole situation, though, is like $4,000 is so much money to save, isn't it? That alone pays your like annual subscription fee of a reasoning engine and is an intelligence on tap for the first time. I think that's the big takeaway. Like, I'm going to be using it for a lot more contracts and stuff now that it's got reasoning capabilities. I wouldn't have entrusted it last year with those same things. So I will probably save $15,000 or more on this year, which is very big jump.
It's massively useful. What it basically means now, for me personally, is I'm empowered to do things where I was so dependent on others. Like, I was in marketing, I was very dependent on a data analyst to look at research and rationalize data. I basically do all that myself. As a creative, sparring partner, I used to have 3 or 4 people in a room to be able to stimulate my best ideas. Now I can work with basically a creative sparring partner that is AI. I have a lawyer to reference things. And it kind of takes me on to probably my third prediction, which was normalizing AI colleagues. So this term, I've seen it pop up a lot this year of like the AI marketing manager, the AI HR manager. And I think we're going to see that the seeds of it start to be normalized where it would have seemed like science fiction just, 2 years ago, right?
Do you know what? I'm going to say I don't agree with that. And I'm going to give you an interesting take as to why. I think there's going to be 2 sides of brands doing this. There's going to be the public persona where you've got like AI influencer, someone that's actually, very visible on Instagram, let's say. And then you're going to have the internal marketing manager that is AI, but you won't want to project this to your customers and to the wider audience. So actually, it will keep it secret. It will just be a human marketing manager as the face of things, but really an AI is doing a lot of the underlying work and a lot of the, trench digging stuff.
You're like, it's a marketing manager's assistant as opposed to being...
What I'm saying is brands can get very bad PR from announcing that they're using AI for their marketing. So they're either going to be very strategic about it by giving the face of an influencer, like a virtual AI influencer that they mark up as such, or they're going to keep it on the hush. But they're not going to just randomly start announcing that they've got AI employee marketing managers, because that's going to be having a negative on their bottom line. Yeah, that's what I genuinely think.
I agree with you. I'd probably say I think the internal workings is still normalizing it, where you would go to like
internally it will be different to the like public version of what the company talks about. Everyone internally will be getting very used to the fact that AI is running the show, pulling the strings in the background and doing a lot of the heavy lifting, and that we're overlooking its work a lot of the time. That's what's going to happen in real life, but like publicly, no one will know that that's happening.
I think it's a good point. Ben, what do you think?
What, whether it will be
normalized,
accepted? Well, it's just, it kind of already is probably on an individual basis, using it day to day, like you just said. I think it will be normalized, even though some companies have a policy where you're not really allowed to use the public tools, but then they'll just have an enterprise solution that is
that's exactly it. The enterprise solutions will come this year.
A model that is being used, and the information being put into it is being housed. So it's not just going to ChatGPT. Because when I was at Amazon and they first launched it, they sent out an email saying, none of you fucking using this.
Right.
If we catch you using this, you'll be in trouble.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, fair enough. So
Got a lot of brand secrets to protect.
Yeah, because people are just whacking in all sorts of information in like confidential information. You know, you can't be putting in documents if you work at a big company into ChatGPT, even though I bet a ton of people do. I know for a fact a ton of people do that. Even in a small company, that's technically not allowed, probably because you're sharing information that's non-public with another company. So I don't know.
It's a breach of contract, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I don't know what the policies are of a ton of companies when it comes to using these. Again, will come down to.
I'll go even bolder if you like. I reckon this year we're going to see a ton of whistleblowers, and these are going to be employees making public how much their company is using AI to displace jobs. I genuinely think that there's going to be people coming out going, nobody realizes this. But, and I'm just going to pick a random brand. BMW has got rid of 90% of its marketing staff completely silently. And I'm here to announce that that's happened because, X, Y, and Z.
There's two parts of that. There's some bullish CEOs that come out and be very proactive. You had the Klarna CEO last year.
Klarna guy is massive on it. Came out and worrying to me the way that he talks about it, actually. He talks
What did he say?
He's just constantly talking about how many staff he's stripping off. Really, proud of it then. He's going, we've 70% of our workforce is like yada, yada, yada. It's like, mate, you're a payment. You're a late day payment system. You're like embedded in the browser. Do you think all businesses were like Klarna? It's like, no, you're a very specific online business.
You've got
to
think
really require
the context for Klarna is that their business model has been under scrutiny by the institutions for a long time and the press, saying A, it's not viable, B, they're not worth, it's not sustainable. And I think for the first time they turned a profit, and part of that solution was, and he came out and said it in a really interesting way. I agree with you, it was very unempathetic, but what he equally said was, we aren't letting people go. He said, every year we have about 20% attrition. So 20% of our workforce move on. He said the majority of those roles are no longer required to be backfilled. So they haven't done mass layoffs, but they're just not refilling the roles. And I have a theory because of this. I think that's going to be the silent displacement, where the actual employment market just gets smaller and smaller over time as enterprises resize for the new technological age. What I'll say on top of that, though, is that's an opportunity for individuals, for businesses, for startups, because you're going to have amazing talent that are either forced or choose independence because of that.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. Ben, you'll like this next one. I said, I believe this year we're going to see more AI creators. So we've had virtual influencers for a long time, these carefully orchestrated sort of virtual entities that act like IP and build up a following. It was kind of massively pioneered across Asia for a long period of time and blurs the line between imagination and reality. And I think it's going to go a step further now and start infiltrating not just like Instagram accounts, but OnlyFans accounts. I think it's going to get really creepy. And by the way, I've seen many investment decks over the last 2 to 3 years, and I've had at least 5 people send me ideas for AI OnlyFans, like basically the same premise. And unfortunately, someone is going to make a fortune doing that. There are a lot of people probably trying, but I think we're going to see a lot of it. Ben, what do you think?
What about the AI OnlyFans? Yeah, I can fuck with that. Well, you'll make a lot of money doing that because it's just going to be like customized porn, that will be $1 billion industry. In whenever somebody has got a model with it, one of the open source models that's just free reign on what you can do with it, and then they just build all of these like yeah, we won't have to go into details about that. But
Well, go outside of the let's take away the pornographic AI.
Yeah.
Let's go into like AI creators more broadly. What are your thoughts?
Don't like most of them at the moment. Think they're lazy. Their content's bad, and that's fine by me. I love that, because then the gap, we've talked about this, the gap between me and them will grow, because as AI makes the barrier to entry low into lots of different content markets, people will begin to then rely on AI tools to do things, which then they don't do the hard things. And actually the hard things and mastering of the hard things will be what separate people when everything's really easy. Just storytelling, building narrative, just understanding how to make good content. And I'm seeing that a lot now with people that use AI avatars, and their whole script is just pulled from ChatGPT. They just whack it into an AI avatar and it's just read. And I just think that like, yes, you're building a really efficient process. I get that. But then what are you doing to actually make yourself better? Because I just don't think that there's much incentive here, because the goal is just efficiency and how can I put out as much content as possible, and it's almost quantity over quality. And I was like, what are you doing about the quality aspect? There will be people that do both. I'm sure there will, but I think there's going to be a lot of people that as always, that cut corners. They just think, oh, there's this now easy way I can create content. I'm going to do that and I'm going to go viral. But there's also going to be a million other people doing the same thing. And I think the people who are going to stay ahead and be ahead will be people that have already mastered how to do certain things because they've learned the hard way. And the people who actually are smart enough to realize that they also need to learn how to do the hard things to be able to then utilize AI into their workflow to be efficient and create good quality content, because every niche is going to become increasingly saturated, especially anything that's talking head, anything that's education, non-IRL essentially. And yeah, I just am always thinking about how, who's going to be at the top in 5 years' time. Potentially there will be an AI version avatar Mr. Beast. Maybe there will be somebody that is so good at creating AI content with avatars and virtual worlds, and that people don't give a shit because it's good content. But I still think that's going to require a tremendous amount of skills in lots of different areas to be able to achieve that. AI generated or not, the fundamentals still remain the same. It just becomes easier to do it, but not at a higher level. That's kind of my thoughts.
Can I give you a bold prediction for TikTok? I think ByteDance are going to introduce so many AI filters this year that the human creativity after that is where the impressive stuff's going to happen.
Well, they already have lots of AI filters.
I know, but I'm saying this year is going to be something like you've never seen before.
But it's like
the fatigue is going to fit in because it's going to be so much that you're never going to predict how much it's going to be.
I agree. But then I also think that actually AI generated content isn't really still at a stage that can be effectively integrated into most niches of content. Yeah, you've got the AI avatars, right? But what's the next thing?
That's what I'm saying.
You've got video generation, right?
This year, I'm going to predict. I said last year, ByteDance uniquely pays 35% of its revenue towards music royalties and only 1% towards creators. So music generation is going to take off on the platform this year. Generative music that people dance to, generative avatar overlays, generative filters, generative everything you can imagine. It's going to be to the point where, Snapchat introduced filters a few years ago and it took off with how basic it was like Microsoft Paint, but people will be able to be so creative with this basic interface. But these AI filters will introduce a whole new wave of creators that will go viral because of a trending filter that never did before. They'll do one clever idea with one new filter and it'll get them 1 billion views or whatever. And that'll be it. That'll launch their whole creative career.
You know what? I think I'm going to agree with Chris here and disagree with you, Ben. The reason being is if I look at that curve, I think we're looking over very short time frames. We're thinking probably not this year, you're right. Maybe not next year. But if I think of how capable AI is in its different modalities, for example, I imagine we could have a best-selling book completely written by AI very soon. That seems very plausible, that a really well-written fiction book could be created by AI. If you think we've already had winning art, images generated by AI, the next logical step in kind
You've
of,
got
let's
to
say,
remember, though, that
difficulty,
winning art was with a
next
human
logical
in the loop.
the
They're
next
the human
logical
prompter.
step, the next logical step is music, right? Because
Right.
if you think of modality, text is probably one of the simplest modalities, then image generation, then music. When you think of nuance, the next one after that is video. So for me, I think it's inevitable at some point in that curve that uncanny valley, or that gap between what feels very authentic or audacious and random, I think that gap closes very quickly in the next couple of years, and that changes the rule book altogether, in my view.
Mhm. I just want to stress, though, for people that aren't that aware with AI, all of what we've been doing today is humans using AI as another tool. This is not talking about AI creating art that then wins awards, or this is being human prompted. That's the big difference, and why I think AI filters with human creatives is going to be the combination that gets the virality. It's not going to be AI itself. It's going to be
But
us
we've
using it in creative ways, because we're still the creative ones. AI just
I
enables our creativity. That's all it does.
this is because we haven't started the agentic era. The whole
Yeah, that's what
point
I
is,
mean.
yeah,
Agentic's
it
coming
hasn't.
in the next few years where AI will just independently write a book. No human
It's
will sit down and ask it to do so.
yeah,
It
it's
will just do so of its
You're
own
going from
accord.
AI being a passive tool. It's
Yeah.
something that augments and helps us in whatever task we want, versus to an active tool, which means it participates in the
Yeah.
economy in its own way based on its own programming. So, like,
That will
whether that
truly be
happens,
revolutionary. Imagine when some company produces an agent that's the next J.K. Rowling, and they create the personality that's going to produce 10 series of books, and they just go off and independently write. That will be, honestly, some movie level shit. There's no ways to write that. That's not what we've got right now. That's not the way AI, but everybody mistakes that. People think that AI is creating these movies and they're
no,
not.
of course not.
Humans are sitting down to prompt it just like they are with Photoshop or any other software.
But
That's the big
let's
misunderstanding around it.
extrapolate a decade from now.
Yeah,
Got
that's a very different process. But people think that's what's happening now, which is not what's happening now. AI will not independently be doing those things, not for the foreseeable future. It's always been humans to date.
Yeah, I would argue, I think we're all probably saying the same thing. It's maybe we have a different perspective on time horizons, and
I'll say the last thing is that journalists really make this really hard for the public to understand, because they say, look what AI made in 15 minutes. And they don't say, look what a human art director who spent 20 years learning graphic design
used
learned
AI.
how to use AI to make that. Yeah.
Yeah, but cool. Next one, I said the intelligence paradox, and this for me is a very simple one. We will see AI do absolutely mind-blowing things. We will have breakthroughs we never thought possible across healthcare, across geology,
I'm really
across
excited for the healthcare
computing,
stuff. Yeah.
across so many things. However, we will see so much dumb shit. Those two things will exist and coexist in the same sentence for a long time, meaning we'll see crap AI, we'll see terrible automations, we'll see all these things that are just awful. Bad images, bad graphic design, bad video generation, but we will also see, so I'm going to call it the era of an intelligence paradox. Some amazing things, but some really dumb shit happening at the same time.
That's a great way to put it, honestly. That's exactly what's going to happen.
I wonder how
There'll be
long that's going to last for.
unprecedented stupidity and incredible breakthroughs like that we never would have even foreseen. The thing that I'm really excited about is when a lot of people are working on this too, actually. DeepMind is already doing a scientific like GPT type thing where it's feeding in more and more papers in order to look through breakthroughs that we already made, that we don't even realize could be the next cancer solving medicine and stuff like this. Like, we don't actually need AI to make these scientific breakthroughs. We need it to look through billions of research papers we've put together and archive and make correlations and predictions with this stuff. That's actually what we need as the next step. It's not the breakthroughs, because
100%.
that's, again, like when Asians are coming in a few years' time, that's not this year or the next year, probably. It's like everything else, though. Yeah, the breakthroughs right now in cancer scans, especially on what are they called? X-ray scans, are incredible. In fact, UK hospitals are trialing this as the world pioneering first. There's like 10 universities in conjunction with hospitals that are doing like pioneering cancer scans that are, could lead to world-changing ramifications if they work, and they show to be, useful to roll out to the rest of the world. But we're doing that, like, which is really cool to see.
Yeah, the things that are incredible are like the gene mapping that would take the
Yeah,
equivalent
that
of
too.
10,000 PhD
Proteins as well.
scientists
Yeah,
mapping out
huge.
gene mapping, and then how that then can be applied for new breakthroughs in medicine and treatments. Yeah, it is wild. And I think the overarching, I suppose, narrative that comes out of academia is just one of just sheer optimism. It was interesting. I listened to an economist talk about the British economy and how it's in, complete, it's taking a nosedive, and it has been for many years. And basically, he said our one hope for Britain is really things like biotech, where biotech is one of the great promises in the world in terms of solving, whether that's food shortages, agriculture, challenges with agriculture, whether that's supporting the environment, whether that's, healthcare, medicines, advanced technology, all of these factors. And he said, we have the academic institutions and the support and the scientists and the talent within Britain to really make a play for this. However, we don't have the capital market infrastructure, meaning our sort of the valuations, the venture capital, the way pension regulation sits, that they can't invest in early stage high risk factors. So we have this like structural barrier that stops Britain leading the way in biotech, but it probably should. And biotech's one of the interesting at the intersection between, say, quantum computing and artificial intelligence. So we're really well placed to like be a powerhouse in the future. The problem is the government, regulation, legacy systems will all probably inhibit it, and will continue to spiral downwards on a more positive note.
Yeah. It's a tough one, biotech. It's also one of the scariest ones because it could be bioengineered, viruses and other things on the other side, pathogens, and could be used for terror. So I think actually governments will step in when they realize that it's going to be almost like a new Manhattan Project, where people realize that we need to get on top of this because it could be a national defense security issue if they don't have the defenses for this biotech stuff. So on the positive side, it's incredible. Like you said, could solve diseases. On the negative side, someone could essentially create something that wipes out the entire
There's like
planet.
polarity to everything, though, isn't there?
With great power comes it's the yin and the yang of nature. If you give someone the ability to solve cancer, you also give them the ability to wipe out the human race. It's crazy, isn't it?
Were you just about to quote Spider-Man?
No.
Yes, you were.
I really wasn't. I'm not a Marvel head. I don't know any Spider-Man quotes.
You were about to say, with great power becomes great responsibility, and
Well,
that's definitely a Spider-Man quote.
I'm sure someone said it before Spider-Man because I've heard that
I don't know, bro. I don't know. Seems very Spider-Man.
It's true, though, isn't it? Like, I like the medium things, the things that aren't so consequential to society, like education. These things can have really good upsides and really bad negative sides if everyone decides to cheat and stuff like this. Societal implications of no one actually learning anything, like Ben said, getting no foundations is very worrying, actually.
I need to actually pick your brains on this. So I'm a startup mentor for an accelerator in Britain. It's the largest UK accelerator for student ideas to go launch startups. And the two of the people that I'm mentoring are building a education platform. And it's all about, well, they're trying to find their user. It's really about democratizing higher end education towards younger students, bridging that and using technology to do that. So I think you'll find it fascinating. I need to pick your brains on a few bits, actually.
Well, one of the best cases I've seen is Harvard. Harvard currently gives away free e-courses. They're very, very good at that. MIT does as well.
That's what I said to one of my perspectives on their program is, when you are an institution like Harvard, Stanford, MIT, Oxford, you name these legacy historic, they already have a brand and a reputation in the world, and their name carries weight.
There's a reason to take their courses over other people's.
There are so many great academic institutions that don't have the name. They don't have the legacy. They don't have the pedigree in the public consciousness. So how do you provide services for them to help them access students across the world in ways that they typically wouldn't? Harvard doesn't need any more help getting more people to want to go there, right?
No, it's true.
In many respects.
I tell you what, there's $1 billion industry in that.
EdTech, 100%.
EdTech is going to be huge. I'm imagining that, when I used to be a lecturer at university, I used to use resources companies. You can subscribe to companies and get sent monthly resources. More as just an inspiration as to what you could do in class so that you don't have to think of everything from scratch. But if you could prompt resources or do homework and submit homework and get marking, these things are going to be a teacher's best friend. They're going to be ultimately very, very useful tech. So again, $1 billion industry, if you can do any of that stuff, I think genuinely useful stuff is going to revolutionize education, and it's not ready for it. Unfortunately, education's a sort of that's kind of why I left. Everything's sort of 3 or 4 years behind because of the way it's rolled out from the government, and it's institutionalized and everything's standardized and curriculum based, and all of these things don't, adapt to new. Whereas if AI came in, it could ultimately rewrite the entire playbook of education.
It's the same point
work,
around
students work, everything.
It's legacy culture meets modern technology. There's always a friction and a tension. Government institutions, academia, any sort of conservative sector, medicine, you name it.
But to hark back to what you said, I would say, I think encouragingly enough for your mentored students, there is a massive industry there to be worked at from a startup perspective. You don't need to be a legacy provider. Actually, you could be a modern AI company that's the best at creating teachers' resources and be a new $1 billion company.
100%.
Similar to OpenAI. Exactly the way that they've done it, would do it within education, become the next what are the big people in education right now? I forget. In the UK, there's three main bodies that, do all of the here's what you're going to learn and here's your curriculum and stuff.
EdXL,
AQA and people like this.
Yeah.
Exactly. You could be the next one of those, standardized for teaching resources or teachers, anything. It could be very, very lucrative.
Gents, I want to give you 2 of my predictions in one, because I don't think they'll need a lot of thought going into them. But 2 I wrote was, we're going to get the word AI agent fatigue with all these agents, research agents, R&D agents, developer agents. And I predict by the end of 2025, we'll have a new word for agents. We keep rebranding these things all the time. And then the 7th prediction I made, was I think we'll start to see AI getting very expensive. So right now, AI companies have been subsidizing their products and services, meaning they give freemium users, and over time, and they do that to trade off growth. And over time, what we'll see is a couple of large pioneers like OpenAI start to roll out their $200 subscription. I think we'll start to migrate pricing models and limit free utility to the point where it's no longer subsidized, and we start to now mirror kind of traditional SaaS pricing. I think we'll move in that direction. So will that happen overnight? Probably not, but I think AI starts to get really expensive, not just for the companies involved in developing and building the technology, but now for the user. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the subscriptions are going to. I don't know. I agree and disagree. I think it's a very competitive market. There's always going to be new people coming. I also think about the hardware that's being developed. I don't know. My knowledge of hardware is not strong enough to know whether people like Nvidia will be able to innovate on chips that makes running models cheaper for people, and then computers are specifically built with one purpose and one purpose only, and that's to run models, and whether that is I'm thinking forward to probably 10 to 15 years as to whether or not you could have that actually built into just a small little device that you plug into a computer, and that the job of that device is to just run the models, and that is just something that then people buy to stick into
I'll
their
give you
computer,
something
like a
even on
memory
top
stick
of that,
or something.
Ben. By that time, you've nailed it, right? 15 to 20 years, our AI models will be so efficient and our hardware will be so capable that you could just run it locally. There's literally no need for anything else. And, so that's the time shelf, I believe, Ollie, is like that you can have premium subscriptions until technology catches up to the point where you can just run local models and it costs you nothing other than a compute on your phone. You're not going to pay huge costs when this is all capable, and that's the weird thing is like, think about it. Like, my friend of mine the other day goes, you can buy every emulated game from the Nintendo 64 on an app on your phone. So they've emulated every game into one single app that you can download and play every single Nintendo game. That's how far technology's come, is you're not going to buy a Nintendo console and all of the individual cartridges and play all of those like that. You can just get an app and it's got everything in it, pre-baked into it. So that's what, Apple Intelligence has come out already. Every new iPhone's already got this pre-built in. That's using local compute. So again, how do you charge for that when you offer the same thing as a very expensive cloud-based $200 a month? It's going to be very hard.
You're right. There's always been limited. Hardware's always been the limiting factor for software. Always has, and it will continue to be. The software just has to get better, more value creative, more impressive, faster, do different things.
Innovation and efficiency is going to be the ultimate thing. China's leading the way on this. That with 100 less to compute power, they're doing the same level of computation, which is crazy. So imagine that you could distill an AI language model into your smartphone or your smartwatch. You could basically just have that built there. There's no need to talk to
What
the
did they
cloud.
call? What was that product that came out? The rabbit. That was supposed to be.
Shit.
The Rabbit R1, yeah, that basically solves something that didn't need solving, which is, it's not as good as your phone. Same with the Humane Pin. A lot of these hardware things become things that you're like, that's just an app, though. It's just an app on my phone.
We had this renaissance of I actually liked the idea when we were being creative around new hardware. There just seemed to be this moment a year and a half ago where you saw all these hardware drops, and because they've all failed drastically, the funding's probably soaked up and no one's backing new hardware, which is a shame, really, because I thought it was I thought they were all naff products, but I thought it was interesting that people were innovating in hardware, and we haven't done for a long time.
It's really hard to introduce something to someone's daily life. That's why the form factor of the Ray-Ban glasses, I think, is the most ingenious.
I think the challenge is something better. You're right. It's not about you can introduce anything, but the iPhone is pretty damn fucking good. You know what I mean? To compete with that in some augmentation is going to be difficult.
Honestly, for its size, its compute is untouchable. That's what it is. It's the smallest possible way to have that much compute power. And that's the scales of economy down. It's really hard to make stuff the Rabbit R1 looked like a Pokedex. It looked like something that was like this big to carry around in your pocket all day. Are you for real? That's bigger than an iPhone with a lot less capabilities. And Apple Intelligence with one app does exactly the same thing. And actually your iPhone's got a much better camera on it. So again, you're trying to introduce something new, which
that's the point. It's a very difficult challenge of creating better. Different, but better is very hard because we've advanced so much.
Apple Intelligence has its own dedicated button on the new iPhone. That's the thing that these guys thought they were solving is the one click into the...
I haven't used Apple Intelligence because it's not available in the UK, but I've had
you can't. I have it. You just got to be on the beta.
people say it's quite naff. It's not very good.
I don't use it. It's meaningless at the moment. It's
People
just
say
like
it's naff.
asks me if I want to change my notes to a different style and shit like that, and I'm like, no, thank you.
It's probably because it hasn't come out of beta yet. Yeah.
I'd rather use. Yeah, it's not really that useful for me.
But you know,
to be
having
honest.
a dedicated button, Ollie, disregards everything about needing a new device. You know, because the thing with iPhone is you're going to have to open the app, open the thing, click a few buttons, and then you're talking to the AI. Whereas in this case, you just touch one button on the side of your phone that's dedicated to that, and it automatically starts your experience with the AI. Kind of like when TikTok opens and you're instantly into a video, you know, like the friction's gone.
It's like one-click pay on Amazon
Yeah,
when that was introduced. That was
exactly.
revolutionary to get people to buy more shit.
Exactly.
The same can be said. Yeah, removing friction is part of the solution, but
It's big.
fundamentally, from what I loved about Apple Intelligence's theory was they weren't trying to create new user cases. They were trying to augment the way you already used your phone and just made it better with more context. And from what I understand, the early reiterations of that aren't doing it well. They're like not very useful. But I'm sure in 2 years' time, it'll be a different story.
Well, it's integrated. Apple Intelligence is integrated into ChatGPT. That's the only thing that I think is good. Is that I think that on the when you activate Siri, you can ask it to get the information from ChatGPT instead of from from Siri.
Bit embarrassing that though for Apple, isn't it? Their intelligence is not enough, so they outsource it to the higher intelligence of AI.
Because that's obviously what people want. Yeah.
Well, it's they missed. I don't think that would have ever happened in a Jobs era. He wouldn't have missed the AI wave in the way that
I agree.
Apple currently have, despite their investments. And like they sat on Siri for how long? Like they had all the opportunity. They were sat on. Whoever headed up that department, clown, I will call them.
It's kind of funny because the two memes with Apple were always, have you seen the mouse that you have to turn upside down in order to charge it? Because the charging port's built into the bottom.
And that's the magic mouse.
Yeah, that's such a design fail, right? But the other joke on the internet is Siri. It's been a meme for a decade about how bad it is, how unuseful it is, how annoying it is. And then they were hoping that Apple Intelligence is going to be the new Siri. But as we'll find out, like it's going to take at least a year for them to get it to the stage where it's talking anywhere near like, you know, Claude or ChatGPT or any of the other ones. Even Bard now and like, you know, Gemini, these are way above, which is worrying.
There's always part of me thinks that because they're at the mercy of incremental growth now in terms of they hit a certain size, that for them to continue to grow, they need a surge of more repeated hardware buys, right? You need to do it at a greater frequency. So there's part of me always thinks with Apple, they preserve technology for future releases to like rebrand it as completely new. So I'd imagine within the walls of Apple, there's some magic going on. We're just maybe not going to see it for 2 more phones.
One thing I would say about Apple is over time, they've become a lot less reliant on other products because initially the iPhone had like a Samsung glass case and it had like chips from ARM and other things. And they've been in-housing a lot of this stuff. And actually their chips
acquiring.
Exactly. They're acquiring in-house it though, you know, because it's a linear way to build things if you can control all the distribution.
It's vertically stacked.
Exactly. I think their efficiency gains and their new chips are going to be very AI savvy. So even though they might not have the best AI apps, they're going to be the best phones to boot other people's apps. I feel like they're the best ones. So again, they're going to win the hardware game because devices is how we all interact with this stuff, isn't it? If Apple owns the Apple App Store and it's 30% every time you download a ChatGPT or whatever, they're making bank.
Apple are best placed to have the best like equivalent of the GPT store, basically. And that's one of my predictions. I'll actually jump onto that now. My 9th prediction was AI marketplaces will emerge. So you have the GPT store. Fundamentally, you can go use other people's custom GPTs they've created, the same across other marketplaces on different models. I think we may this year start to see this emerge in other arenas and fields, similar to an app store. And people not only sell single source, they'll sell teams of people. basically agents working together, collections, collectives, collective intelligence coming together will be sold at enterprise level first, but I think then soon it'll be sold to consumers as well. What do you think?
Yep, 100%.
Yeah.
You'll be able to get a whole marketing department, for example. That would be a level above just having an agent marketing help. Is buying all the employees, a VP of marketing, a head of creative, a head of this, a head of whatever, and they all do separate roles. And actually, as we discussed earlier, with this chain of thought reasoning, as a community of AIs, they'd probably do a lot better job in terms of, the
More
output that
useful,
they
more
give and stuff.
actionable, working together, validating better quality work.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of the seeds of what will be the new gig economy. In part, individuals empowered with teams of people. So again, it's stacking the odds in the favor of the startup. Startups that aren't encumbered by diseconomies of scale, too many processes, too many systems. And suddenly now they have access to teams of AI support systems underpinning and helping them and augmenting what they do. I think that could start to get really interesting for the startup economy.
So do I. I think the fascinating thing here, and I've only just thought about this actually, us humans have created all these systems like the company structure and the parliamentary structure, and they're exactly what benefits AI. You put a democracy of AIs and you get a better answer. You put a company of marketing department of AIs, you get a better answer. These are exactly the ways that we've found that we give
Team
better
dynamics.
answers.
You have someone who's good at monitoring and analyzing data. You have someone that's good at applying data. You have someone that's good at creating from that data. You have someone that's good at selling.
Yeah.
It's
And,
just
and I think, honestly, that's the boldest prediction I could give for the future is every movie oversaw the fact that there's going to be one demagogic AI. No, there's going to be billions of independently intelligent AI that actually give a better output as a whole, just like we do. We're stronger as a whole than we are individually. We could do things at a level of society that we can't do, not, like build the pyramids, invent airplanes. These can't be done by a single person. They can be done by a community or a company of people or a government of people. And AIs will be the same, I predict. AIs will not become one overpowering thing. They'll be exactly like us, individuals.
What you're saying there, Chris, is there is a company that I've been sort of advising for a couple of months now called Whitespace, and they've developed something called collective intelligence. And they build they build very advanced agentic processes for complex organizations, whether that's financial institutions, military, defense. Think of the most complex problems that need accuracy, need deep reasoning, need all these advanced features. They build those agentic processes for those organizations. And one of the things the founder, Paul, said to me was, everybody's racing for AGI, advanced general intelligence, artificial general intelligence, moving in that direction. And that is a very expensive race. And you have a few people probably capable of doing that. His view is, for most people, it won't be AGI that's the most important factor. He's betting on collective intelligence, emulating team dynamics and the agentic era. So he's putting all his energy resources in developing hardware and software, and he calls it collective intelligence, collective AI. And that's his view of the future. And it was a really interesting take that he told me about a year ago when I thought, actually, there's a lot of foresight. And he's been working in technology for 25 years as a CFO for many technology companies, publicly listed. He launched the largest EIS fund in the UK that's still sort of standing. He's a real technologist. And hearing his view of the future really enlightened me to actually, the future is yet unwritten, but that makes the most sense to me, this collective intelligence.
In the short term, for sure. I think that's a very overlooked part of AI, is that collectively they formulate and work just like us, actually. They're very much a mirror of us. And if you think down to it, when we first did AI, the whole point of it was to try and mirror the human brain. like neural nets are mirrored on our synapses and our individual neurons. So actually it makes total sense that even though we don't understand them like they're a black box, that collaboratively they can get better answers than they can independently. Because this goes with the chain of thought idea, and checking other people's work. It's a no-brainer when you really think about it, but it's not logically obvious.
I think it's if you look at most innovations in society, they emulate nature. If you're trying to fly a plane, their origins are emulating what we see in nature. And if you think
Absolutely.
of how teams evolve, how industries evolved, there's a lot that technology can be done in emulating how we behave, how we think. And that's fundamentally what I think Paul is suggesting. Jen, it's just conscious of time. I want to land on the last two, and I think Ben will have some strong takes on this. The last two predictions I wrote. One, I believe this year will be a creative renaissance, meaning we will see more and more generic, bland, useless, AI-generated written content, image content, video content, talking heads, avatars, useless, generic, bland. We will be flooded with that types of content, and I think we'll move into a year where quality over quantity will prevail. Original thinking becomes a premium, and big ideas are back on trend. What do you think, Ben? Hit me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we discussed earlier, I think people's feeds are going to become increasingly saturated with shit content. Well, they won't make it to people's feeds because algorithms won't distribute it. I do think that there's chance that a new social media platform might arise that has stricter policies on AI, as in like no AI generated content. Obviously, that would be hard to police, but if we move down to a point where there has to be hidden watermarks on AI generated content, then platforms could build in features that marks it, and a new platform could arise. I think Instagram is going to be, even though the CEO came out and was, oh yeah, we're introducing avatars. I think the Instagram audience is very anti-AI over more other audiences. I think that platform will last. I think TikTok don't give a shit. They don't. TikTok don't give a shit about protecting the integrity of their own platform. They've shown that this year by just going after pushing out anything that makes them money. Instagram is, I think, the opposite. Even though a lot of people hate Instagram as well. I think, there's going to be, I potentially might see that platforms just integrate another feed that has AI specifically for AI content as a potential solution. Potentially, like they send out there's an option to tick it on and off in platforms. I think they're all going to have to be thinking about these things to meet the needs and demands of users, as we probably still have this divide of people who want to see AI generated content and people don't. I think people who don't won't even realize it's AI generated content sometimes. But then it all just depends on I get essentially how much AI generated content is actually good content, and therefore it does make it to the feed, and whether people are okay with that. They still watch it. Whether they're okay with it is a different thing. I watch stuff that goes viral, doesn't mean I actually like that content, but I watch it out of curiosity. And that the same thing might happen with AI generated content, as people are curious, so they watch it, but they don't actually like it, or they don't want to really see it again. It didn't do anything for them. But I don't
think
know
you nailed it,
how the
Ben.
platforms.
I'm going to quote a spaghetti western film. It's going to be the year of the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's going to be a really, really crazy year, because the good, right, is going to be people like my mate Dave Clark is going to produce a Hollywood level film. And VO2 is going to make it like the most watchable AI we've ever seen, the most realistic. The bad is going to be the absolute spam that everyone's going to receive. As you said, though, Ben, the algorithms might not distribute it. So that might be like the sticking point to that. And the ugly is going to be when people don't even realize it's AI and they're being fooled and scammed and tricked. And that's going to become more of an issue this year because of the quality of VO2. It's literally indistinguishable. Sometimes I've seen 6-second clips now for the first time in my life where I couldn't tell it was AI anymore. And I've seen hundreds of
I think
thousands
it
of
will have
AI
to be
videos.
marked.
Yes, it's going to have to be marked in
It
some
will
way.
have
or
to be
another.
marked and regulated at some point. This is all going to be regulated. I was going to say it earlier when you guys were talking, but I wouldn't be surprised if the world ends in 20 years. Not to be a
All right,
pessimist, but
Nice way to finish.
At the end of the day, that's not far fetched because what happens when we get to a point where you can just buy robots, fill them with an open source model, and it just builds me a bomb or a parasite that destroys the world. There's going to have to be regulation across everything because when we get to AI developing to a point when you were talking about biotech and it's actually really solving problems now, it's actually thinking for itself and solving shit, that's going to be incredibly bad. Because what happens if I go, well, can you build me something that can kill 10 million people from everything that I go and buy down Sainsbury's? Whether that's possible or not, probably not today. We think it's not, but that's things like that are going to become increasingly accessible to people, bad actors, and there are more than enough bad actors in the world to do something catastrophic. That's a wider point, to be honest, but I kind of I'm worried about where the world's going. This is
the theme of the episode. It's the yin and the yang, right? Like, because the good side in filmmaking and creativity is we're going to get all these new movies from independent filmmakers like my mate Dave. The bad side is we're going to get flooded with content that's going to be spammy and lie to us and stuff like this. On the good side of what Ben just said, you could argue basically it's really tragic, the fact that we're going to get like this lack of understanding of content and stuff. And actually the Chinese models do give you downloads without a watermark. That's the troubling thing. Like, we've got to come to some consensus about the creativity that's put out there so that we all have some genuine, we can believe what's on the internet again. Because otherwise, we're going to go down a rabbit hole very, very fast. But the positive sides of everything else are really good. The democratizing of storytelling is a great feature. We might get the best content of all time. But we're also going to get flooded with some of the worst content, and some of the most damaging and fake news and stuff. But think about this, you just said the bioweapons, Ben, and it got me thinking. AI is going to be the race is defense versus attack, because they'll be just as good at defending. If we can stay ahead with the defense side of things, maybe that's where the regulation of governments needs to come in. You can innovate on the protection of humans AI, but you cannot innovate on the damaging of humans.
When I've distributed COVID V2 down my local Tesco's, it's too fucking late, mate.
That's the problem. It's
if we're waiting on governments to be ahead of the game,
they got to prove it through five.
You just got to believe the good in humanity. The
I don't though. Look at the world.
Portion. I think the news cycle makes that bigger than it is, though. I think it's a very small portion of society actually wants to kill everyone.
But it only takes a small portion of society to be able to kill everyone.
I know, that's the problem.
If they can have access to it, and that person is smart enough to figure it out. Look at America, full of lunatics.
Hi to all our USA listeners.
Well, look, gents, I think that's the most poetic, beautiful way to finish this thing on. We are all doomed. America.
We're gonna die. We're all gonna die in 20 years. So yeah.
Or it could be a complete utopia and the exact opposite. That's the yin and the yang, baby.
No way. Absolutely no way. It's a utopia.
But that's the thing, though. There's not a zero-sum chance that it's
we're
not
all
a
going to
utopia.
be saved by the machines. Cancer will be cured. War will be.
Mate, when we can just buy robots, I guess they're gonna have to have. There can't be any open source, super advanced tech models when you can buy robots, because then I can just make my robot's doing whatever he wants,
I'm
and
just-
that's a problem.
I'm just staying in Elon's good graces. Just when he sets his humanoids onto the world.
There's no way. Robots is the end. Robots is the end of the world. Definitely. Like being able to buy a robot that can do whatever it wants. That is the end of the world. I don't think
I can't
we'll
wait.
get
Those 5 years before they turn on us, before we have the iRobot scenario. Those 5 years where a robot does everything for you. Walk the dog. I don't want to walk the dog. Robot, go do it. That for me. We have hit peak and then we all die.
They should just not allow robots. We're the world's fine as it is.
Right, fellas. On that note, beautiful note. I'll love you and leave you. Boom.